This is the 7th day of the July-August 91 7-day retreat in Springwater. And as we usually do, we will read from the writings of Huang and Krishnamurti. Quite a number of people are here who haven't been here before. This is not done to bring in final authorities. It is a change in words and quite relaxing for me not to have to give a talk, to read, and for people to hear things put differently. Huang lived about 1,000 years ago in China. He was a Zen teacher, and his talks and dialogues were recorded by one of his chief disciples, who was a Buddhist scholar and also the governor of the province where Huang lived. Huang terms are Buddhist, or let's say affected by that tradition in which he taught, the Zen tradition. Some of the words I have changed from Sanskrit into English. Some of them left. The word Buddha not just referring to the historical personage of the Buddha, but to an open, free, unattached, undivided mind, which is this whole universe, not divided, not conceptualized or conceptualizable, even though words are used. Krishnamurti died a few years ago. The writings of both are copyrighted, so even though we're recording this on our master recorder, the tapes of this particular talk will not be for sale. The first book we will read from is The Teaching of Huang translated by John Blofeld. Some people here have heard it. It seems maybe 1 million times. And yet no one has ever asked me, when will you stop reading that stuff? I can't hear it anymore. And one may find that how one hears or how one listens depends on the state of mind. When no judgment or thought process interferes, the listening is fresh and new, and therefore what is heard is also fresh and new. So is it possible to listen in that way, at least for moments at a time? The Master said to me, all the Buddhas and all sentient beings are nothing but the one mind, beside which nothing exists. This mind, which is without beginning, is unborn and indestructible. It is not green nor yellow and has neither form nor appearance. It does not belong to the categories of things which exist or do not exist, nor can it be thought of in terms of young or old. It is neither long nor short, big nor small, for it transcends all limits, measures, names, traces, and comparisons. It is that which you see before you. Begin to reason about it and you at once fall into error. It is like the boundless void which cannot be fathomed or measured. The one mind alone is the Buddha, and there is no distinction between the Buddha and sentient beings, but that sentient beings are attached to forms and so seek externally for Buddhahood, for completion or wholeness. By their very seeking they lose it, for that is using mind to grasp mind. Even though they do their utmost for a full eon, they will not be able to attain to it. They do not know that if they put a stop to conceptual thought and forget their anxiety, it will appear before them. For this mind is Buddha, and the Buddha is all living beings. It is not the less for being manifested in ordinary beings, nor is it greater for being manifested in the Buddhas. What is the way, and how must it be followed? Huang, what sort of thing do you suppose the way to be that you should wish to follow it? Questioner. What instructions have the masters everywhere given for meditation practice and the study of the truth? Huang, words used to attract the dull of wit are not to be relied on. Questioner. If those teachings were meant for the dull-witted, I have yet to hear what truth has been taught to those of really high capacity. Huang, if they are really people of high capacity, where could they find people to follow? If they seek from within themselves, they will find nothing tangible. How much less can they find a teaching worthy of their attention elsewhere? Do not look to what is called the truth or true teaching by preachers, for what sort of true teaching could that be? Questioner. If that is so, should we not seek for anything at all? Huang, by conceding this, you would save yourself a lot of mental effort. Questioner. But in this way, everything would be eliminated. There cannot just be nothing. Huang, who called it nothing? Who was this fellow? But you wanted to seek for something. Questioner. Since there is no need to seek, why do you also say that not everything is eliminated? Huang, not to seek is to rest tranquil. Who told you to eliminate anything? Look at the void in front of your eyes. Or look at that which is in front of your eyes. Not name it, not react to it, not know it. That's what the void refers to. That state of looking, in which judgment and separation and reaction is quiet. Look at the void in front of your eyes. How can you produce it or eliminate it? Questioner, do you mean we should not form concepts as human beings normally do? Huang, I have not prevented you, but concepts are related to the senses, and when feeling takes place and concepts are formed, wisdom is shut out. As we say today, a different process is going on, a different mode in thinking, analyzing, conceptualizing, analyzing feelings and so forth. Questioner, then should we avoid any feeling in relation to the truth? Huang, where no feeling arises, who can say that you are right? Who can say that you are right? Questioner, Why do you speak as though I was mistaken in all the questions I've asked, Your Reverence? Huang, you are a man who doesn't understand what is said to him. What is all this about being mistaken? See, something is said to us and we immediately refer to ourselves. Either we understand it or we don't. Instead of just listening. May not understand it, but we don't need to react. I can't understand. I'm dumb. I'm mistaken. Just listen. It's like seeds falling on the ground. Sometimes into a furrow, and rain and sunshine happens. And seeds begin to sprout. We do not how or why. Question. Up to now you have refuted everything which has been said. You have done nothing to point out the true teaching to us, or the truth to us. Huang, in truth there is no confusion, but you produce confusion by your questions. What sort of true teaching or truth can you go seeking for? Questioner. Since the confusion arises from my questions, what will your reverence's answer be? Huang, observe things as they are and don't pay attention to other people. There are some people just like mad dogs barking at everything that moves, even barking when the wind stirs among the grass and leaves. Once I put this question to the Master: how many of the 400 or 500 persons gathered here on this mountain have fully understood your Reverence's teaching? The Master answered, their number cannot be known. Why? Because this way is through mind awakening. How can it be conveyed in words? Speech only produces some effect when it falls on the uninstructed ears of children. And at another time, Huang, when we talk of the knowledge I may gain, the learning I may achieve, my intuitive understanding, my deliverance from rebirth, my moral way of living, our successes make these concepts seem pleasant to us, but our failures make them appear deplorable. What is the use of all that? I advise you to remain uniformly quiescent and above all activity. Activity we talk so much about, of comparing, commenting, story making about oneself. Mental activity, inciting physical activity about oneself. Doesn't mean to stay in bed all day and never get up. He doesn't mean that. I'm quite sure. I didn't ask him. Do not deceive yourselves with conceptual thinking, and do not look anywhere for the truth. For all that is needed is to refrain from allowing concepts to arise, which is a dangerous thing to say because it can bring in the whole thing of thought control, mind control through practices, techniques, which is more conceptual stuff. It is obvious that mental concepts and external perceptions are equally misleading, and that the way of the Buddhas is as dangerous to you as the way of demons. Though others may talk of the way of the Buddhas as something to be reached by various pious practices and by scripture study, you must have nothing to do with such ideas. A perception, sudden as blinking, that subject and object are one, or that there's no division, no duality, will lead to a deeply mysterious, wordless understanding. And by this understanding, you will awake to the truth. When you happen upon someone who has no understanding, you must claim to know nothing. He may be delighted by his discovery of some way to enlightenment, yet if you allow yourselves to be persuaded by him, you will experience no delight at all, but suffer both sorrow and disappointment. What have such thoughts as his to do with the study of truth? Even if you do obtain from him some trifling method, it will only be a thought-constructed thing having nothing to do with truth. Truth is something never lost even in moments of delusion, nor is it gained at the moment of enlightenment. It depends on nothing and is attached to nothing. It is all-pervading, spotless beauty. It is the self-existent and uncreated. Ah, it is a jewel beyond all price. When the moment of understanding comes, do not think in terms of understanding, not understanding, or not understanding, for none of these is something to be grasped. This truth of thusness, when grasped, in quotation marks, is grasped, but he who grasps it is no more conscious of having done so than someone ignorant of it is conscious of his failure. Refrain from seeking Buddhahood or a final state of bliss, enlightenment, or whatever we go out searching for, seeking. Since any search is doomed to failure, some madman shrieking on the mountaintop on hearing the echo far below may go to seek it in the valley. But oh, how vain his search. Once in the valley, he shrieks again and straightway climbs to search it among the peaks. Why, he may spend 1,000 rebirths or 10,000 eons searching for the source of those sounds by following their echoes. Far better that you make no sound, for then there will be no echo. No knowing, no sound, no track, no trace. Question about how can we prevent ourselves from falling into the error of making distinctions between this and that. And it's not discerning distinctions. This is a given to discern. A barking of a dog from shrieking of a crow. But the reaction, the knowing, the associations, the liking, disliking, and off into the video room. How can we prevent ourselves from falling into the error of making distinctions between this and that? Huang, by realizing that though you eat the whole day through, no single grain has passed your lips, and that a day's journey has not taken you a single step forward. Also by uniformly abstaining from such notions as self and other. Do not permit the events of your daily lives to bind you, but don't withdraw yourselves from them. Avoid the error of thinking in terms of past, present, and future. The past has not gone, the present is a fleeting moment, the future has not yet come. When you practice meditation, sit in the proper position, stay perfectly tranquil, and do not permit the least movement of your minds to disturb you. This alone is what is called liberation. Be diligent, be diligent. This selection by Krishnamurti is called Questions and Answers, published by the Krishnamurti Foundation, India. It's the last selection. It is the questioner asks, what is freedom? Krishnamurti. Many philosophers have written about freedom. We talk of freedom, freedom to do what we like, to have any job we like, freedom to choose a woman or a man, freedom to read any book or freedom not to read at all. We are free, and what do we do with that freedom? We use that freedom to express ourselves, to do whatever we like. More and more life is becoming permissive. You can have sex in the open park or garden. We have every kind of freedom, and what have we done with it? We think that where there is a choice, we have freedom. I can go to Italy or France, a choice. But does choice give freedom? Why do we have to choose? If you're very clear, perceive purely, there is no choice. Out of that comes right action. It is only when there is doubt and uncertainty that we begin to choose. So choice, if we will forgive my saying so, prevents freedom. The totalitarian states have no freedom at all, because they have the idea that freedom brings about the degeneration of man. Therefore they control, suppress. You know what is happening. So what is freedom? Is it based on choice? Is it to do exactly what we like? Some psychologists say if you feel something, do not suppress, restrain or control it, but express it immediately. And we're doing that very well. And this is also called freedom. Is throwing bombs freedom? Just look what we have reduced our freedom to. Does freedom lie out there or here? Where do we begin to search for freedom? In the outward world, where you express whatever you like, the so-called individual freedom? Or does freedom begin inwardly, which then expresses itself intelligently outwardly? Do you understand my question? Freedom exists only when there is no confusion inside me, when I am psychologically and religiously not to be caught in any trap. You understand? There are innumerable traps, gurus, saviors, preachers, excellent books, and so forth. They are all traps. And if I am confused and there is disorder within, must I not first be free of that disorder before I talk of freedom? If I have no relationship with my wife, my husband, or another, because our relationships are based on images. There is conflict which is inevitable where there is division. So should I not begin here inside me, in my mind, in my heart, to be totally free of fears, anxieties, despairs, and the hurts and wounds that one has received through some psychic disorder? Watch all that for oneself and be free of it. But apparently we have not the energy. We go to another to give us energy. By talking to a psychiatrist, we feel relieved, confession and all the rest of it, always depending on somebody else. And that dependence inevitably brings conflict and disorder. So one has to begin to understand the depth and the greatness of freedom. One must begin with that which is nearest oneself. The greatest of freedom, real freedom, the dignity, the beauty of it, is in oneself when there is complete order. And that order comes only when we are a light to ourselves. That book was from the 60s, here's one from the 80s, a year and a half before Krishnamurti died. This is called Krishnamurti to Himself, his last journal, which was dictated into a machine. It is a new day and the sun won't up for an hour or so. It is quite dark and the trees are silent, waiting for the dawn and the sun to rise behind the hills. It comes so slowly, penetrating the whole world. And here in this quiet, secluded house, surrounded by orange trees and a few flowers, it is extraordinarily quiet. This was written in Ojai, California. There are no birds as yet singing their morning song. The world is asleep, at least in this part of the world, far away from all civilization, from the noise, the brutality, and the talk of politicians. Slowly, with great patience, the dawn begins in the deep silence of the night. It was broken by the morning dove and the hoot of an owl. There are several owls here. They were calling to each other. And the hills and the trees are beginning to awaken. In silence, the dawn begins. It gets lighter and lighter, and the dew is on the leaf, and the sun is just climbing over the hill. The first rays of the sun are caught in those tall trees, in that old oak that has been there for a very, very long time. And the morning dove begins with its soft, mournful call. Across the road, across the orange trees, there is a peacock calling. Even in this part of the world, there are peacocks. At least there are a few of them. And the day has begun. It is a wonderful day. It is so new, so fresh, so alive and so full of beauty. It is a new day without any past remembrances, without the call of another. There is great wonder when one looks at all the beauties, those bright oranges with the dark leaves, and the new flowers, bright in their glory. One wonders at this extraordinary light which only this part of the world seems to have. One wonders as one looks at the creation which seems to have no beginning and no end, a creation not by cunning thought, but the creation of a new morning. This morning, it is as it has never been before, so bright, so clear, and the blue hills are looking down. It is the creation of a new day as it has never been before. There is a squirrel with a long, bushy tail quivering and shy in the old pepper tree which has lost many branches. It is getting very old. It must have seen many storms, as the oak has in its old age, quiet with a great dignity. It is a new morning, full of an ancient life. It has no time, no problems. It exists, and that in itself is a miracle. It is a new morning without any memory. All the past days are over, gone, and the voice of the morning dove comes across the valley, and the sun is now over the hill, covering the earth, and it too has no yesterday. The trees and the sun and the flowers have no time. It is the miracle of a new day. We want continuity, said the man. Continuity is part of our life. Continuity of generation after generation, of tradition, of the things we have known and remembered, he said. We crave continuity, and we must have it, otherwise what are we? Continuity is in the very roots of our being. To be is to continue. Death may come, there may be an end to many things, but there's always the continuity. We go back to find our roots, our identity, he said. If one has kept one's beginning as a family, probably one can trace it generation after generation for many centuries, if one is interested in that kind of thing. The continuity of the worship of God, the continuity of ideologies, the continuity of opinions, values, judgments, conclusions. There is a continuity in all the things one has remembered. This is still the man talking. There is a continuity from the moment we are born until we die. With all the experiences, all the knowledge that man has acquired. Is it an illusion? End of question. Krishnamurti, what has continuity? What has continuity? That oak, probably 200 years old, has a continuity until it dies or is chopped down by man. And what is this continuity which man craves for? The name, the form, the bank account, the things remembered. Memory has a continuity, remembrances of that which has been. The whole psyche is memory and nothing else. We attribute to the psyche a great many things, qualities, virtues, ignoble deeds, and the exercise of many clever acts in the outer and inner world. And if one examines diligently, without any bias or conclusion, one begins to see that our whole existence, with a vast network of memories, remembrances, the things that have happened before, all have continuity, and we cling to that desperately. The squirrel has come back. It has been away for a couple of hours. Now it is back on the branch, nibbling at something, watching, listening, extraordinarily alert and aware, alive, quivering with excitement. It comes and goes without telling you where it is going and when it is coming back. And as the day is getting warmer, the dove and the birds have gone. There are a few pigeons flying from one place to another in a group. You can hear their wings beating in the air. There used to be a fox here. One hasn't seen it for a long time. Probably it has gone away forever. There are too many people about. There are plenty of rodents, but people are dangerous. And this is a shy little squirrel, and wayward as the swallow. Although there is no continuity except memory, is there in the whole human being, in the brain, a place, a spot, an area, small or vast, where memory doesn't exist at all, which memory has never touched. It is a remarkable thing to look at all this, to feel your way sanely, rationally, see the complexity and the intricacies of memory and its continuity, which is, after all, knowledge. Knowledge is always in the past. Knowledge is the past. The past is vast, accumulated memory as tradition. And when you have trodden that path diligently, sanely, you must inevitably ask, is there an area in the human brain or in the very nature and structure of a human being, not merely in the outer world of his activities, but inwardly, deep in the vast recesses of his own brain, something that is not the outcome of memory, not the movement of a continuity? The hills and the trees, the meadows and the groves will continue as long as the earth exists, unless human beings in their cruelty and despair destroy it all. The stream, the spring from which it comes, have a continuity, but one never asks whether the hills and beyond the hills have their own continuity. If there is no continuity, then what is there? There's nothing. One is afraid to be nothing. Nothing means not a thing. Nothing put together by thought. Nothing put together by memory, remembrances. Nothing that you can put into words and then measure. There is most certainly, definitely an area where the past does not cast a shadow, where time, the past or the future or the present, has no meaning. We have always tried to measure with words something that we do not know. What we do not know, we try to understand and give it words and make it into a continuous noise. And so we clog our brain, which is already clogged, with past events, experiences, knowledge. We think knowledge is psychologically of great importance, but it is not. You can't ascend through knowledge. There must be an end to knowledge for the new to be. New is a word for something which has never been before. And that area cannot be understood or grasped by words or symbols. It is there beyond all remembrances. This last selection is from Krishnamurti's notebook, and that year is the 60s also. A notebook or journal was kept for less than a year. Entered in all the different places where he was talking, and this one was entered in India. Across the river, Smoke was going up in a straight column. It was a simple movement bursting into the sky. There wasn't a breath of air. There wasn't a ripple on the river, and every leaf was still. The parrots were the only noisy movement as they flashed by. Even the little fisherman's boat did not disturb the water. Everything seemed to have frozen in stillness, except the smoke. Even though it was going so straight up in the sky, there was a certain gaiety in it and freedom of total action. And beyond the village and the smoke was the glowing sky of the evening. It had been a cool day, and the sky had been open, and there was the light of 1,000 winters. It was short, penetrating, and expansive. It went with you everywhere. It wouldn't leave you. Like perfume, it was in the most unexpected places. It seemed to have entered into the most secret corners of one's being. It was a light that left no shadow, and every shadow lost its depth. Because of it, all substance lost its density. It was as though you looked through everything, through the trees on the other side of the wall, through your own self. Your own self was as transparent as the sky and as open. It was intense, and to be with it was to be passionate, not the passion of feeling or desire, but a passion that would never wither or die. It was a strange light. It exposed everything and made vulnerable. And what had no protection was love. You couldn't be what you were burnt out without leaving any ashes, and unexpectedly there was not a thing but that light. We will end here for today.